Now, I've had an intermittent problem with my left hand, my clutch hand, throughout this summer. Sort of a mixture of pain and my hand occasionally cramping up and not being able to release my grip. And I'd never associated this with riding the Bonneville. I just thought it was one of those things that you pick up as you get older. Then about a month ago, I was stuck in heavy traffic for a while and this problem manifested itself again. And I effectively lost control of my clutch. I got to the point where I was pulling the clutch in, but I couldn't get my hand to release it. And it was all centered around my little finger and my third finger cramping up and failing to release. I just couldn't get them to let go. Now obviously this is not a good scenario, and when I got home I had a closer look at my clutch lever to see if that actually was the problem. Now they say that the devil's in the detail, and this is one of the areas where Triumph does let itself down occasionally. I've been aware for quite some time that the clutch lever and the front brake lever don't match. In fact, they're not even from the same factory. They're both actually a completely different design, and the quality of the two isn't even the same. But on scrutinising the clutch lever when I got home, I realised that one major difference between the two levers is that the clutch lever is actually about 3/4 of an inch shorter than the brake lever. Now I do have big hands, so I accept this is not going to be a problem that everyone's going to encounter. But whereas with the brake lever there is plenty of room for my hand, for my fingers to even spread out slightly, on the clutch lever there isn't. And by the time I've got a pair of gloves on, I found that I was actually having to hold my hand at quite an unnatural angle to be able to grip the clutch lever and operate it. Now this has obviously been causing some sort of stress on the tendons or muscles in my hand, which has resulted in this problem that I've had over the summer. The fact that the levers don't match had been bugging me for some time, but I didn't actually have any intention of changing them because from a distance you can't really tell. But after I realised this problem with the clutch lever, it was obviously time to change. The Triumph ones were out of the question because they're something silly like £175. Now, I had a good look around on the internet, and there's one common design that I really liked that kept cropping up, but the particular design that I liked varied in price. In fact, some places were charging £110 a pair. Now I suspect that this is just a generic design and the manufacturer supplies them to various companies with that company's name stamped on them. But imagine my delight when I discovered that TECbike parts were actually marketing these same set of levers for just £39.99. Now I ordered a pair, and while I was at it I also ordered the clutch cable bracket. A little item that TECbike parts are quite famous for is just something that replaces that nasty stamped out item for something that just looks a little bit nicer. Now at the time I think these were on offer for something like £14.99, but the normal retail price is £19.99. They're made of alloy and the CNC machined. It is actually a little miniature work of art when you look at it, and it reminds me a little bit of a fishing lure. It is very lightweight, but I'm assuming that TECbike parts have done the homework and that it is easily strong enough for the job. And actually fitting it to the bike takes no more than about 5 minutes. It's a very simple matter. Now either side of the existing bracket there are two little nuts for adjustment and for locking the clutch cable in place when you've got it adjusted. What I would suggest is you just take a picture of this with your phone before you get started, or if you've got a good memory, memorize approximately how much spare you have on the thread either side of this. It just saves you a lot of hassle actually readjusting it later on. Back off those two nuts, then remove that little rubber boot from the end of the cable adjuster, and then release the nut on that side all the way off so that it's just hanging on the cable. Once you've done that, you can safely unfasten the two 8mm bolts that hold the pressed steel bracket in place. You then just slide the bracket along till you get to the cable part and just pop it out. Now putting the new bracket back in is more or less a reverse of taking the old bracket out, the only difference being that the slot to allow the cable to enter into the bracket is at the bottom rather than the top. Now fitting the new bracket is the exact reverse of removing the old bracket. Whether this bracket has been CNC machined from billet or from a rougher casting I wouldn't like to say, but what I will say is that the machining and drilling is absolutely spot on. Everything lines up perfectly and there were absolutely no dramas in putting this back on. Now I contacted my local Triumph dealership about the torque values for these two crankcase bolts. that hold the bracket on. Unfortunately, the system was down at the time. They said they would ring me back, but they thought the torque values were 8 Newton meters. I'm still waiting for them to ring me back, so I did fasten up to 8 Newton meters. If you found yourself doing this job yourself, it might be an idea to contact your local Triumph dealer and just check that those values are correct. Now, I judge the quality of this item to be very good, and the standard of finish in it, which is like a sandblasted or vapor blasted finish, is also very good and very attractive. It's one of those details that other people probably aren't going to notice, but in my book it's one of those ugly cheap little items that's been replaced by something that is better. The devil is in the detail, and it is just little details like this that complete the overall look of the bike. So now let's take a look at the levers. Now, they do just come in standard transparent plastic packaging, but both levers are protected from each other in transit by a layer of foam. Now, they do look good in the packaging, but I have to admit, once you pull these out of the box, you do get that immediate wow factor. As you would expect, it's got TECbike Parts little logo on the front of the lever, but the overall finish of these levers is absolutely superb. This is a very high quality black anodizing. Both levers feature a 6-position span adjustment, and unlike the Triumph items, they match. Even the adjustment levers are the same. Now, these are CNC machined from aluminium billet, and when you compare them to the original Triumph ones, the first thing you will notice that although they are considerably smaller, they are also considerably heavier. Now, the Triumph ones will be just simple sand cast units with a low quality aluminium, and I think it's a testament to this TECbike part that they have used a very dense high quality aluminium, so they are going to be much stronger. Now, my only worry with these when I got them is that they are a little bit smaller than the standard Triumph ones, certainly as far as the brake lever is concerned, and they're about the same size as the clutch lever, but I'll come back onto that later on. Now, fitting these levers is quite simple and straightforward, and we'll start with the front brake lever. It's hydraulic, so there's no cables to worry about. It's simply secured by one single slotted screw. Now, to stop this from coming loose while the bike's been used, Triumph have secured it with a locking nut underneath, so that needs to be removed first. Once you've got that off and put it somewhere safe, you simply unscrew the screw and that will release the lever. Now, what you will notice when you take the Triumph lever out is that it does have a steel insert inside it, obviously to protect from wear. Now, as I've already said, the material that's been used to make these levers by Triumph is a very soft aluminium, so this is necessary. The TECbike lever doesn't need it. It's made from a much harder aluminium, so there's no need for an insert. It simply goes in as a straight replacement for the Triumph lever. Now, it's good practice just to lube this up before you put it in, and I like to use a calcium based white spray grease with PTFE, which is perfect for this kind of job. It might look like I'm putting a lot on, but bear in mind it is an aerosol, so there are a lot of solvents in with this grease when you first apply it. Once those solvents have evaporated, it will just leave a very thin layer of stiff water resistant grease, which is ideal for this kind of job. Any excess, and there will be some excess, can simply be removed after you've finished the installation by wiping it away with a workshop wipe. Fitting the new lever is the exact reverse of removing the old lever. You line the holes up, screw the screw back in, and then secure the locking nut. I think the torque setting for this is something like 3 Newton meters, but I don't have a torque wrench that will go down that far. So it's just a simple matter of screwing that screw in to a sensible level, then refitting the lock nut on the underneath. As long as the lock nut is engaged fully on the thread, i.e. there's a little bit of the screw thread visible, you shouldn't have any problems. Once everything's fastened up, check your lever for operation, make sure that it moves smoothly and of course engages the front brake correctly. And if you like, at this stage you can just have a mess around with the span adjuster and get the lever adjusted to where you want it and where it's comfortable for you to use. And then finally, it's time to fit your clutch lever. Now, this is slightly more complicated because you've got a clutch cable to contend with, but I'll quickly go through it with you. Now, the first thing to be aware of is that this clutch does have a clutch sensor, which is a small micro switch situated underneath it. and this is designed to work in conjunction with your cruise control if you have it fitted, and with management of your engine modes. Now it's a little micro switch with a long plastic plunger, and it does strike me that if you're a bit heavy-handed while you're taking your clutch lever off and putting your new one on, there's a possibility you could snap it. So make yourself aware of where it is and be aware of it throughout the installation. Now the first thing to do here is just to back off your cable adjuster so you've got a little bit of slack to work with on that clutch cable. Once you've done that, there's a single nut underneath on the retaining pin that holds the lever in place. This needs to be unscrewed, and then the retaining pin, which is different from on the brake lever, just pushes out. Now there still will be a little bit of tension from that clutch cable, so you just gently need to coax the lever out of its fitting and bring it outside so that you can get access to where the cable fits inside it. Now there's a clearly visible channel on the end of the lever that allows you to actually withdraw the cable. You need to maneuver the lever around until you've got that lined up and out. Then at the end of the cable it has a cylindrical shaped stopper. This will be fairly tight, and you might just need to manipulate this slightly with something small like an electrical screwdriver to maneuver it out and get the cable away from the lever. Fitting the cable into your new lever is the exact reverse of this. It is a little bit fiddly, and it's probably the hardest part of this entire job, but you won't find it to be any great problem. Take your new clutch lever and lube it up as you did before, but there is one thing here that you must pay attention to. Inserted into the pivot point on your old lever is a brass or phosphor bronze bush, and you do need that on the clutch lever because the forces engaged through that clutch cable will be far greater than they are on your brake lever. So you simply swap out the one from the old clutch lever and put it into the new clutch lever, making sure of course that you lube everything up as you do so. Be careful not to twist your clutch cable while you're fitting it into the new lever, and once you've got it in with that phosphor bronze bush fitted into your lever, insert it back into the housing. Lube the pivot pin up with your white grease and then insert it into your lever housing to fasten your lever into place. It's then just a simple matter of replacing that nut on the underside. And remember, while you're doing this, keep an eye on that plunger on the micro switch for the clutch. When this is done, wipe off any excess lube and readjust your clutch cable to where it should be. You're looking for about 2 or 3 millimeters of play before the cable actually engages when you pull the lever back. Check that your lever operates smoothly and as it should, and also check that your clutch is working correctly. There is a possibility that you may have inadvertently changed the bite point on your clutch. Just be aware of that, and then adjust the span on the lever to make sure that it's comfortable in the hand. Now these levers are slightly smaller than the stock Triumph levers, but the designers have paid a lot of attention to the ergonomics and the way the lever is designed. There's no huge stylized blob on the end of the lever that gets in the way when you're trying to operate it, and your hand falls intuitively straight onto the lever and operation is smooth and easy. I don't anticipate that I'm going to continue to have this problem with my hand that I've had over the last few months. Now, looks wise, I think these levers look fantastic. I know some people it's not going to be to their taste, and a comment that I can hear ringing in my ears already is that these are too modern and that people prefer the retro look. Well, that's fine, each to their own taste, but let's put things into perspective. This is a bike with LED lighting, traction control, ABS, switchable engine modes and a ride-by-wire throttle. Personally, I think that the black levers, as opposed to the natural silver levers that came with the bike, fit in very nicely with the switch gear. They also give the bike a nice, upgraded, moody, racy look. And for me, it fits in perfectly with the modifications that I've got planned for this bike in the future. Right, I hope you've enjoyed this video and I hope you've found it useful. Now these parts are quality, and I think for what you're getting for these 3 components, the prices are very reasonable. This is an easy, cheap upgrade that anyone can do, and I think even for the inexperienced, taking your time, this shouldn't take you much more than 30 to perhaps 45 minutes to get all these bits on and then get back on the road again. I will leave links to the product pages on TECbike Parts website for these items in the video description. Thanks for watching. Obviously there will be another video next week, and until then, I'll see you next time.